Welcome all to the second day program of the National Seminar on Cybersecurity. Today we are privileged to have Mr. Shankar, who is the GM Pre-Sales and Professional Services, Redington India Private Limited, and he heads a strong, diverse pre-sales team. He was the pre-sales consultant, enterprise IT infrastructure security in Wipro Limited. He was also with the cybersecurity unit of HCL Technologies. He has done his master's in information systems from the University of Wales, UK, and also holds a master's degree in cyber forensics from the Madras University. He is also a certified information systems auditor. I am very glad to welcome him for this seminar, and he will be now talking on cyber kill chain. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for those kind words, ma'am. Thank you for that introduction. And a very good morning to everyone present here today. Well, even before we get started, I'm not too sure how many of you are even aware of what this whole kill chain thing is all about. Kill chain, it's a very, it's a word actually which is originated from the military world. It's originated from the military concept of relating to the structure of an attack, a military attack. So it consists of, how they identify the target. An army identifies the target. What is the force which they would want to use? What are the weapons which they would want to use to attack? What is the decision which they will take when they should attack the target? When is what is the right timing to attack the target? And finally, how do they destruct that particular target? And conversely, the idea of breaking an opponent's kill chain, that's what is more important. We, as if you have to take the same concept and apply it to the world of cybersecurity, wherein we are talking of a lot of cyber attacks which are happening, you need to understand what is the tactic the attacker is using. And we will need to understand on how, as cybersecurity professionals, how is it that we can go ahead and break the opponent's kill chain? Which state is the opponent currently in? What are the strategies and tactics and tools and procedures as we as cybersecurity individuals will need to deploy in order to break the kill chain of the opponent is something which we as cybersecurity professionals will need to do. And that's exactly what we are going to talk about in today's presentation. Just a little bit of background information about the cyber kill chain. The cyber kill chain actually was an original concept. As I told you, it originated from the military world, but the whole framework of this coming into the cybersecurity arena was actually brought in by this company called Lockheed Martin. So if you go ahead and Google for the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain, that's what it's called. They were the initial pioneers who actually brought this to the world of cybersecurity, and they said, what is it that needs to be done? What are the strategies that people are adopting as part of the cyber kill chain? How is it slightly different from? So there are research papers which Lockheed Martin has published as part of the cyber kill chain. As part of my presentation, we will also have we will look at the abstract of this thesis which Lockheed Martin's researchers have published today. And the whole idea is to get yourself introduced to this concept of kill chain and how it is used in various areas, and what are the things as counter, what is it that we need to do, and things like that is the idea of today's presentation. Now, there are also other frameworks which are built on the kill chain model, which have taken and are of a lot of significance in modern times. One such framework is called the MITRE ATTCK framework. It's called the MITRE attack framework in short. It heavily borrows the concepts of the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain, but in the paucity of time and in order not to take you into too much of depth into whatever into this whole concept, I'm not going to be discussing about the MITRE ATTCK framework today. Okay, so with that being said, we will quickly move into the next we'll start with our presentation today. And for this, I know we will start with a small poll, which I thought will help us to break the ice and get started. It's a fun poll, so go ahead. I'm going to launch this poll right away. Guys, I see about 24 of you right now, so please go ahead and start voting. So we'll keep this poll open for about 1 minute. I think we've already lost about 20 seconds. So guys, it's not too tough. You're not going to be graded on this. Don't worry. Whatever you think is the right answer is the right answer.
So just proceed, sir. It is not working out. Just...
No, I've seen there are about 9 people who have actually voted already.
Oh, fine.
So I already am seeing that.
But currently it is not giving the option to select, sir.
9 people have voted already, ma'am. I'm not too sure. How is that possible? Now 10 people have voted.
Maybe it's not for admin. Host, it's not showing.
I'm not too sure. 12, 13, numbers are going up. Okay, that's about 54% of people who have voted. Should we wait for another 10 seconds for the others to vote as well? Okay, I think that's about it. So we'll end this poll right here, and let's look at what the what you guys have voted. So about 42% of the people here have said that the first known crash of systems is actually from the 1850s. About 42% have said that it's 1950, and about 33% of the people here have gone with the option the start of time. Not too sure what made them choose the option the start of time. So let's look at the let's look at the right answers. So as you know, did you know that the first ever computer dates to Adam and Eve? It was actually an apple with a very limited memory. It had just one byte, and just after the byte, everything crashed. Everything crashed. And because of this crash, the crash was so significant that we've been seeing repercussions ever from then until now, with all kinds of crazy problems. One such crazy problem is this, which the whole world is talking about. A person who does not want to accept that he's actually lost the US presidential elections. Well, it's my way of saying that it's an effect of the crash which happened at the start of time. Anyways, that was just for fun. So let's keep. I hope we have broken some ice, and let's keep proceeding. So let's get serious. So why are we talking about the cyber kill chain now? What is the significance of the cyber kill chain today in the time of this pandemic? So, I'm not going to read through this slide, but even before I begin, I'm compelled to draw this topic with an incident within our epic, the Indian epic Ramayana. I'm sure most of us here, or all of us here, are very well versed with the Ramayana. As we know, Rama's wife Sita is abducted by Ravana, and he's taken away to Sri Lanka. Rama then sends Hanuman in search of Sita to Lanka. And upon reaching Lanka, Hanuman is actually confused as to how he's going to identify Sita. Because at that time, there was no photography, there was no this thing that this lady is Sita. And they did not know that at that point in time, Sita was somebody who was actually jailed in Ashokavana, right? So when Hanuman actually goes to Lanka and he finds out the emperor, and there is a beautiful looking woman besides Ravana, he actually mistakes her for Sita, considering the beauty of her. And from whatever descriptions that he has heard and he has gathered so far, he mistakes Mandodari for Sita. And then he then goes ahead and he scans around the entire area, just like how you do a network scan. So he went out, he does a discovery mission, and then he realizes that this woman who's right next to Ravana, is she so happy? If she's Sita, she can't be happy. And using that intelligence, he actually decides that she cannot be Sita, and he resumes the search. And he eventually finds out that Sita is actually jailed in Ashokavana, right? So this is a concept of discovery. I'm just trying to draw an analogy from this particular incident in the Ramayana to something which is happening right now. The pandemic, it's cornered all the business. Traditional workforce is all done. The new normal is all of us are working from home, and Zoom virtual backgrounds are here to stay. And we don't know how far this is going to go. And the number of threat actors which are coming out, I'm sure all of us as cybersecurity aspirants or professionals have been following up in the news. The recent attack which has happened on SolarWinds, which was discovered by FireEye, and now Microsoft has also said that many of their customers have also been impacted because of this particular breach. When we started this whole conclave of this, me talking about cyber, the kill chain, this attack was not there. When the VIT contacted me for this was not in the public domain. But now we are talking about this particular attack which is happening, and as much as about 16,000 customers across the world are supposed to be attacked, are supposed to be impacted because of this SolarWinds breach which has happened. So the threats are evolving, and when people are no longer in office, it means that cybersecurity professionals are also not in the office, and it's not a very effective time. And hence, the number of threats, just like the coronavirus, is increasing in an exponential form. It's increasing in an exponential form. So I think it is absolutely important, and that's the timing could not be more perfect for us to talk about the cyber kill chain. So with that, let's go on to the next slide. But even before we talk about the cyber kill chain, I think it is very important that we stress upon what are the basics. As part of all my lectures, I have this as a standard slide. So if some of you already know it, please bear with me. But I think it's absolutely essential that we talk about these basics before building it any further. As we know, there are three types of controls which any organization would deploy. Now, controls could be anything. A control is something which is ensured to stop any malicious activity from happening. That's about it. It does not, controls are not from the world of cybersecurity or information security. It actually dates from the financial world. So there are three types of controls: preventive controls, detective controls, and corrective controls. To explain the whole thing, let me give you a small example. Let's assume there is a room full of valuables which are kept inside the room. Now, leaving the room open for people to come and steal means that there are absolutely no controls which are deployed whatsoever. However, when I deploy a door with a lock and a security guard outside, it means that there is a deterrent control which will not allow external threats who are people who are with an intention to steal the wealth to come inside. And this is a preventive control. The door, the lock, the security guard is all part of the preventive control. By all means, preventive controls are the most effective form of controls which can be deployed, because it will completely block any kind of threat to enter inside the network or an organization whatsoever. However, preventive controls cannot be always deployed. For example, if an organization decides that in order to be very safe, they are going to be absolutely disconnected from the internet, that's a preventive control. It means that they are going to be absolutely safe, but it affects the business performance. Today's world, you cannot afford to be saying that I will not get myself exposed to the internet, right? Whether you like it or not, you need to be there. So preventive controls cannot be done all the time, and hence we have detective controls. Detective controls are controls which are also deployed when they actually, as the name suggests, as and when an attack happens, a detective control is deployed to ensure that they are actually found out. So a classic case and example is a CCTV device, a network intrusion prevention device, a firewall device, any other network devices which we can think about. Our antivirus software on our computers is also part of detective controls. Detective controls are a little less expensive than preventive controls. Sorry, I wouldn't call it expensive. A little less effective is the right word than preventive controls by theory, because of the reason you actually allow and then you try to detect when something is happening. And the third form of controls is corrective controls. Why do we need corrective controls? Because sometimes it is possible that we may not have a very effective preventive control. We may not have the best detective control, and hence you may need to rely on a third form of control, which is a corrective control. A corrective control is after the damage has been done. Classic case and example, today what's happening with the SolarWinds case, which we just talked about. After something has been done, how do you find out what's really happened? What is the loss? How do we stop anything in future remotely similar to the existing attack from happening in the future? That's part of corrective controls. All your forensics, all your cyber forensics, all form on the corrective controls. So that is the basics which I wanted to say. Uh, Preventive controls, most effective, very cheap. Detective controls, not as effective as preventive controls, but a little more expensive. Corrective controls, most expensive, may not, when an organization fails to have a preventive or a detective control, corrective controls alone may not suffice. An organization or any cybersecurity professional is expected to mix and match multiple parts of preventive, detective, and corrective controls in one single solution to be more effective. And that is absolutely key. And this strategy is called defense in depth. Just like how a room full of valuables has a door, a lock, a security guard, a CCTV camera, probably some electric fencing, all these are controls. The whole objective is, even if one fails, another one would ensure that it compensates. So when you build these layers and layers of controls, or layers and layers of security, then you are expected to be in a much better position. Moving on from there, uh, organizations today, they are talking about two different teams wherein these controls are deployed. A classic case is the blue team. A blue team is pretty much the IT cybersecurity professionals like you and me who are constantly implementing controls. They deploy a firewall, they try and see this, that. They have a security monitoring software. They constantly keep a vigil on what's happening on the network. They have a security incident response team. There is a patch management team which actually ensures that patches are deployed on a timely fashion for any known vulnerabilities within the system. Uh, they talk about intrusion detection and prevention. This is typically the cybersecurity team or the IT team in Indian parlance. However, as we have heard this statement time and again, there is no such thing as I'm absolutely secure. And the classic case is that we always hear the term that there are only two types of organizations in the world: the ones which have been breached and the ones who do not know that they have been breached. So the fear of the unknown has actually ensured that there needs to be a separate team, which is called the red team. A red team consists of people who would constantly try and probe the network as if they were a hacker, and they constantly try and see what are the risks in the system, what are the vulnerabilities there. If they find a vulnerability, they will do a penetration test. All your social engineering, all kinds of assessments of frameworks, they constantly keep trying to keep the blue team at their toes, just to ensure that at the time of an actual attack, they are absolutely prepared. A red team generally consists of people who are external consultants or external organizations who constantly keep doing these penetration tests, who constantly keep doing social engineering attacks, uh, all these different kinds of things. So, and then there is a conjoining between the red and the blue, which is the purple team, which has a separate, which is a combination of both of these, right? It is very important that both these teams need to be there within an organization for effective cyber security measures to ensure that an organization is reasonably secure. Without which, just with a blue team, we will be complacent with our security standards. We will need to have two different teams to ensure to constantly keep challenging the status quo, right? And this is something which global organizations have put in. Indian organizations are slowly catching up. It's still quite some time before something like this happens. Many a times, most organizations look at all this as a cost activity. Unfortunately, ROI is not immediately seen. ROI stands for return on investment, and organizations tend to look at numbers, numbers, numbers. And the cost of being prepared, there cannot be an ROI measure to it. The only way that companies tend to have this red team is after they have actually been breached. They all learn it the hard way, and that's how it is, unfortunately. So it is very important that there exist these two different teams. uh, you know uh, but as I told you, when you do talk to companies, they think that my blue team itself will do the job of the red team. It's like this movie Onion. I'm not too sure how many of you have seen this movie. There are two characters. There is this onion character, and there is a split personality, which is an onion character, which is more like the red team. And then there is this Ambi character, which is a straightforward, honest person, which is more like the blue team. And these two personalities between themselves are constantly at war. So it's something like that. So this is a much more detailed this thing as to what this red team and blue team do. Uh, you know, Here, in case there is a compromised host within the network, which assumes the breach, or without any idea of the network, it tries to exercise its tactics, its techniques, procedures, and tries to exploit the vulnerabilities. It tries to constantly challenge the blue team's people, its processes, its technologies which the blue team uses, and the red team tries to attack. The blue team exercising its techniques, procedures, and processes against the simulated attacker within its own environment, and they try and see how effective is their defense mechanism. And the purple team, as I did tell you, they result in both the teams working together in that particular simulation activity, and they increase their capability and their maturity levels, and they enhance their technologies or their processes to be better equipped in case there is a real attack when it happens. So even before we proceed, let's do another poll. Let's do the second poll. Ma'am, how do I do the second poll?
There is a drop down.
Oh yeah, okay, I saw that.
You have to select it there.
Okay, I've launched the second poll. I see about 26 of us, including me, in this presentation today. I would request you to go ahead and vote. I'm not seeing anybody who's voting yet. Okay. There's one person who's voted. Two. Guys, come on. Four. Come on, I'm expecting at least 15 votes. You're just 15%. No right and wrong answers, guys. It's okay. Go ahead. The questions are intended to confuse. You have a total of 10 responses so far. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, last 10 seconds and then we close. Okay, 3, 2, 1, and I close the poll. Okay, I'm sure you should be able to see the poll results. Most of you have chosen the option worm for the first question. Most of you have chosen virus for the second question. And most of you have chosen botnet for the third question. I'm not just going to share the results right now, so I'm going to keep you hooked until the last of this thing, and we will share the results. Sorry, the right answers after that. Okay, fine. Let's get going. Let's move on. So we talked about the cyber kill chain. So as I told you, this particular kill chain model, the abstract of the entire cyber kill chain from the Lockheed Martin is this. Out of which the main reasons that this actually came about is that a traditional incident response methodology presupposes a successful intrusion. They don't. So a traditional incident response actually kicks in only after an attack has happened. That's not enough. That's definitely not enough in the world of cybersecurity. A new class of threats, appropriately dubbed as advanced persistence threats, APT or APT in short, represents well-resourced and advanced trained adversaries that conduct multi-year intrusion campaigns targeting highly sensitive economic, proprietary, and national security information. And then the other highlighted thing is feedback loop, which enables defenders to establish a state of information superiority, which decreases the adversary's likelihood of success with each subsequent intrusion attempt. Right. So enough and more of English. So advanced persistent threats, which actually take multiple years for it to formulate and be successful, It's just not a normal attack which happens. So how serious is this cyber threat? What really is happening? So this is a news article which I came across, some time ago. So Israel is being one of the topmost military and cybersecurity experts. Israel military actually they bombed a building which was housing the Hamas cyber security forces. If you look at the right side, they actually show the complete building, and using the Israeli security forces, they realized that in this building, is where the attackers were all there. So to ensure that they actually go ahead and attack, ensure that they put a full stop to it, they went ahead and they actually did an airstrike with a missile with precision, damaging just the floors in which those guys were, which they were there. So this article is from May 2019, and that's how serious people are taking cyber threats. Oops, looks like my alter ego put this in, but anyways, that's where the whole world is going into. Okay, so the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. There are 7 steps into the entire thing. The first step is reconnaissance. The second step is weaponization. The third step is delivery. The fourth step is exploitation. The fifth step is installation. Seventh step is command and control. And the last step is action. We are going to see what are these 7 steps in detail. How do the attackers operate? And we as the blue team, how do we go ahead and stop these attacks? That's the whole format of today's presentation. So without any ado, let's move into the first bit, which is reconnaissance. Reconnaissance, as the name suggests, is engineering. How do we engineer? How do we research? I'm sorry, beg your pardon, it's not engineering, it is research. How do we research? So reconnaissance, the word suggests that the intruder will select the target, researches it, and attempts to identify the vulnerabilities to target the network, right? So here is an example of the Google hacking database. It's called the GHDB. I would urge you after this presentation, I will also share the slides with all of you. You can actually go ahead and do a Google search for GHDB or the Google hacking database. There exists a website which actually hosts it. It looks something like this. So when I did this slide, the presentation, it was on the 7th of this month. It actually has mentioned that these are this particular the first one. Let's talk about it. System plus toner plus input tray plus output in URL CGI. So this is actually found out by this guy called Andros Papa. And if you actually click on this category, you will be able to see various IP addresses of various devices across the world, across organization, which are vulnerable to this particular. They are vulnerable with this particular threat, right? So you will be able to exploit this particular device which is left exposed on the internet. And that's the kind of research ability which the Google hacking database currently has. So this is one type of reconnaissance which an attacker would do. This is where he will try and take his inputs from. So this is another website called Shodan. Again, this is something which you will be able to take, you will be able to Google and you will be able to find out the URL. So here again, you will see a list of IP addresses. So it will keep a track of all the vulnerabilities which actually are there in the internet. And it will also say, if you look at the second example, 45.11.19.28, it says that it is from Germany, and the web server which they're using is Nginx. And what is the particular vulnerability it has? A web server is vulnerable, which means if there is an e-commerce website which is running on that, you as the attacker will be able to probe and do whatever it is. So this is the first step of the kill chain. So as blue team, how do we ensure that we have been victims? How do we know that we are part of the Google database already? There's no mechanism internally for us to find out. So that was the red team, which is finding out all this, and they're doing all that. So we as the blue team, how do we find out? So some ways to find out is, by looking at the logs of the corporate website. If you start seeing sudden spikes in usage, then it should give you suspicion. Let's assume at 8 p.m. at night on a Monday, the traffic is 100. Usually, that's the pattern. But when you see an anomaly that, suddenly one day it has gone to 1,000, then it should ring a bell as cybersecurity enthusiasts and security professionals to find out and see why that has happened, whether there is a genuine activity which has led to that, or whether it is something suspicious. Are there unusual hits from any particular country or a particular geography or at any given point in time? Have I been pawned is a website. The URL is there. You will be able to click on that URL. You will be able to put your email address there, your official email address and personal email address, whatever. And you will be able to see how many times your particular email address or your username has been breached. For example, I use my personal Gmail account to log in to Big Basket. Big Basket was recently in the news for being breached, and their customer databases were out, right? So if I go to have I been pawned and put my email address, it will say that your email address has appeared in so many breaches in which the password was that. And that is why it is so important never to reuse passwords. Because if one place, if the password, if you have the habit of reusing passwords, at one place, if the password is found out, then you are at a grave risk that your email account may also be taken over, or anything may be any other accounts, including your bank account or anything which uses single sign-on, they can be compromised, right? So these are some ways how you will be able to find out reconnaissance activities if you are a blue team, right? So let's move on to the second phase, the weaponization phase, right? After reconnaissance, you move into the weaponization space. So weaponization is where the intruder will create the remote access malware weapon, such as a virus or a worm, and he'll tailor it to attack one or more vulnerabilities which he's already found out because of the reconnaissance activity which has happened, right? So here are some news articles which are there. Therein, this particular group where they have found out that this Symantec has discovered evidence that some group has also used this malware long before it became widely available for anyone. Now, antivirus softwares and all, they can only work on mass-produced malware after some time. Like the new coronavirus sample which was found out in the UK, which has caused panic in the last couple of days. This particular mutant of coronavirus was actually found out a couple of months ago. I think September something of this year is when they found out the first strain of the new mutant. But forget that we don't have a cure as yet. Until it becomes to a certain size, the antivirus companies will not do anything. So this particular mutant, which has been lying from September till date, is actually called as a 0 day, which means that nobody knows that such kind of vulnerabilities or malwares exist in the first place. So like that, an attacker may use he may craft a threat which can exploit this particular vulnerability in the form of a virus, in the form of a worm or anything of that sort. So this is another place, this is from Domain Shield. These are the list of all the suspicious domains which are there, and what are the new category of domain which have come in. So these domains, typically they have all these malwares, 0 day malwares, or lesser known malwares, which can be suited, and they can actually be taken and you can customize it, and you can target that weapon towards the attack surface. I'm sure most of you are also aware of the dark web, where such things can be done for a fee, where you can actually hire a hacker anonymously, and you will be able to get such customized malwares for yourself. So as a blue team, how do you actually identify this weaponized? There's no simple answer. You constantly need to be doing research plus research. You constantly need to be researching multiple places. Security communities, there are enough and more threats. The most popular forum of security experts is this database called the Exploit DB. A Google search will lead you to find out Exploit DB. Interestingly, Twitter is also a very good place where people there is a lot of talk which actually happens in and around security. If somebody gets breached, the first thing, most of the social media is also targeted around Twitter. Zero-day attacks are also first mentioned on Twitter than on any other social media. That's the reason I did not mention social media and I mentioned Twitter, because Twitter is extremely popular. So it is very important to we as cybersecurity professionals follow a few threads of a few people in Twitter to understand whether such kind of weapons do exist within in the world out there. So not a simple answer. You constantly need to keep doing your research. So what happens, as if I'm a blue team, if there are these multiple exploits which are there, what I would do as a cybersecurity enthusiast is I would take all these exploits and I'll see what are the vulnerabilities which they will attack, and I will see whether I have those vulnerabilities inside. I wouldn't call it blue team, I would call it purple team. And I will see which can actually exploit my network. So if this is a small dashboard which is there, which can actually say that, which actually says that out of all the vulnerable threats which I did find out, about 600 exploitable category is 6014, out of which high risk is 65%, and so on and so forth. So if you are a cybersecurity professional, you can present some interesting dashboards like this to your top management for them to take notice and increase the budgets and the importance of this whole activity towards people like us, right? Okay, looks like there's another cartoon. So so it's something like that, right? Okay, but even if it's a small banana peel, we'll need to ensure that we don't leave it uninvestigated. Okay, before we move into the next category, let's do another small poll. I'm just going to launch it. The last time we did this poll, we had 22 people who voted. So I hope we have more people who are going to vote this time. So guys, go ahead and vote. Nobody voted yet. I see about 30 people. One response. Let's keep this open for another 40 seconds. We see about 10 people who voted. Come on, guys. Last time we saw 22. I want to make it better. I see about 31 of you, including me. So I would expect at least 25 plus responses. Last 10 seconds. Okay. 3, 2, 1. And that's the end of the poll. So about 58% of you have said that brute force hacking is the answer for the first question. About 47% have said that DDoS is the answer for the second question. And about 89% of people have said that firewall is the answer for the third question. And the fourth question, of course, antivirus is the answer. Okay. All right, so let's keep moving. We talked about the first two phases of the cyber kill chain. Let's move into the third phase, which is delivery. How does the delivery happen? So classic case is delivery happens through phishing emails. In most cases, the delivery packet is sent on unsolicited mail. There are technologies as far as email security is concerned. However, spear phishing or targeted phishing, which appears to be from a legitimate sender, which appears to be from a legitimate, it appears to be that the mail is actually coming from the boss of the employee or the CEO of the organization, or in this case, something like FedEx trying to send some genuine package, with a button which says that update my address. It actually you click that, and it sends you to a site which exactly mimics FedEx, wherein you are asked to put in some sensitive information in terms of your address or in terms of your credit card details or something of that sort. So it's not just one phishing email which actually comes in. It could be a series of emails which actually collect information from multiple people, and they actually put in a lot of these payloads. If you look at the email on the right side, it has some malicious attachment. It says that purchase order, but then if you look at it, there's a file which inside a zip a compressed folder, which when you open, it could be a 0-day attack, and your antivirus will not find out about the 0-day, and it starts infecting inside your network. This is how delivery would happen, right? Classic case in time. Have we not seen something like this happen to our known people itself so many times? Have we not seen emails claiming that the Prince of Nigeria would want us to give us a lot of money because they do not have any legal heirs? All these are examples of classic phishing. So how do you detect delivery? Right? Again, not very easy. This also would require a lot of effort. So we would need to understand multiple series of tools and technologies which are currently there, which will help us to find out. As I told you, since we did talk about email, we will need to have phishing email simulation done, and we would need to find out who are the people who are susceptible to such kind of spear phishing attacks. Today, there exists technology which will allow an organization to subscribe to a tool which will allow emails to be sent across its employees, just looking like a phishing email. and it will be from the CEO of the organization to its employees, wherein the employees would be asked to click on a link and put something confidential. This particular tool will then analyze how many such employees opened the mail, how many such employees clicked on the link, and how many such employees filled in the details without suspecting anything. Basis which you will be able to find out who are the employees who are at high risk, and then you will be able to train them to find out that they are not supposed to be clicking on such kind of emails in future. So that is, these kind of tools currently exist. We also, as cybersecurity professionals, we'll also need to understand what is it that a particular tool can do and what it can't do. So in this case, when I talked about phishing, you just cannot say that I have antivirus. You just cannot say that I have email detection systems which can stop me from do all this. Yes, it can do it to a certain extent, but the unknowns still remain. So that is the limitation of these technologies, right? There is no silver bullet for all this. So we as cybersecurity professionals, we will need to understand the limitations of all this in a perfect fashion. Right? Okay. So this is just a dashboard. I gave you a very similar this thing for the email system. This is a dashboard on what how many people, what are the IP addresses which are compromised as per the host. This is very similar. This is how a dashboard for these email systems currently are. Right? It can tell you how many, what is the security intelligence inside, how what are the bots which are part of the email traffic which is coming in. So if you look at this email security appliance, it can give you all these kinds of reports. How many bots it stopped, how many malwares it stopped automatically. So just by looking at this report, if you see a trend variation, then it is for us as cybersecurity professionals to go ahead and investigate into all this. So this is how you would go ahead and detect delivery. So moving on to the next phase, which is exploitation. Once after delivery, after the packet has been successfully launched into a network, it will need to be exploited. It will then start to crawl across the network and find out which are the specific systems which it can infiltrate itself. This process is called exploitation, right? So malware code which takes action on the target network to exploit the vulnerability. So this is the exploitation, right? So if you look at, I'm not too sure if you are able to read through the text here. This is actually an output. The left is a news article. This is about a zero-day attack which happened on a very popular web server which runs on Linux, which is called Apache Struts, and a zero-day attack on what it does. Now, if you look at the output, which is a Linux output, and people who are familiar with the command line, you will find out that this output, which I have highlighted here, how is it that it actually exploits using this particular zero-day, how it actually attacks the this particular web server. So it actually goes and does the whoami command execution. So it will give all the details, and using the details, there is a malicious payload which you see here. I have just masked out the IP address because this is actually from a live system. So it actually says, and if you look at it towards the end of the second box which I have highlighted, it actually says that chmod 777. chmod 777, if you are familiar with the world of Linux, you would understand that it would give the attacker complete admin access, read, write, execute code on that particular web server, which is that particular directory, right? So this is how they would go ahead and exploit vulnerabilities. So here is a detailed flowchart of a 2017 breach which happened in this British bank called Equifax, right? So an attackers, they scan the vulnerable servers, then they find out a vulnerability, then they actually forged document which look like dispute resolutions with the bank. It happens all the time, right? And then they locate the additional servers. They actually find out the login credentials of databases from after they've sent out such dispute resolution emails. And using these login credentials for about 76 days, they were extracting data. So nobody knew that the attackers were inside the network. And they slowly extract data from 51 databases without being detected whatsoever. No, that's a breach. They don't need to actually go ahead and destroy whatever is in there. Just by having access to such sensitive data itself is enough. Classic examples, Indian examples, which we have seen in recent times, which are successful exploits such as this, are the Big Basket and the Paytm Mall. I wish the Indian IT companies or the startups such as Paytm and Big Basket were a little more serious, and they actually publicly acknowledged such kind of breaches. But unfortunately, that's not the case. They completely denied it, and then they went ahead and said, yes, there is a breach, that nothing really happened. Nobody has said what really they have lost from their end. Maybe because our regulations are not as tight as what they are in Western Europe and in the United States. Okay, so here is another way of how you can actually go ahead and find out exploits, right? So in this case, going back to the Apache struts exploits, which I was talking about, Apache is a Linux-based software. So this machine is a Linux machine. So if I look at the access log, I constantly need to keep look at accessing access logs. If you look at it, this is what the coworker did, right? From this particular IP address, he has said get CGI bin testing.cgi. CGI, as you know, is a common way of executing code on a web server, right? So if you look at it, on the error log, what the CGI in turn has code is to go ahead and to remove the var.www folder, right? var.www is the web server folder for Apache in Linux. If you are familiar with Linux, you would understand that. What it does is that this CGI command actually goes and it says bin rm-rf var.www, which means it will completely destroy this particular web server, right? So this is how it can. So how do I as the blue team, how is it that I can find this? When I look at the access.log, when I see such suspicious CGI running, which is not something usual, I don't even know that such kind of CGI even exists within the web server. If you see that something suspicious is there, then you should know that you have been exploited, and then you should immediately start investigating further. And the first point in time is to remove that particular CGI, and that's how you should do it. Now, I'm not too sure if you are aware of Windows PowerShell. Now, in order not to be partial just to the Linux world, I have also given an example with Windows PowerShell. The arguments are all self-explanatory. Here we are talking about a PowerShell command which is being executed. It actually says that it should actually look at the user profile script, and it should be executed when the Windows machine is starting, right? And it is a non-interactive script, so there will be no prompt whatsoever when the user logs in, and then it will execute a particular policy, and it executes a command in an encrypted format. It's a base 64 encrypted command, so God knows what's really going to happen, right? So if you look at the PowerShell code, if I was an administrator, if I look at the Windows log and I find out the log would have this, right, then that's where I would realize that this particular machine has been exploited. So this is how you would go ahead and find out if you are being exploited. So moving on, the first 4 chains are now over. The next 3 are absolutely crucial. So the next thing in the cyber kill chain is the next phase in the cyber kill chain is installation. So let's see what really happens in this particular phase. So installation, here the malware weapon will install the access point or a backdoor it will successfully install the backdoor, which can be accessed by the intruder as and when they want. They will be able to access the backdoor as and when they want. Here is a small article which I was looking at the internet. So here, if you look at it, this particular network camera, which is from this make called Access, they have introduced an application platform to these CCTV cameras, which is called the Access Motion Video Detection. And they found out that it is possible for a malicious actor to tamper with the firmware and replace it with a malicious package. Had I prepared this presentation in the last week, I would have not had this particular article. I would have had the SolarWinds article breach which has happened. If you look at the SolarWinds breach, they actually released a new version of the monitoring software to their customers, which was actually exploited by another group, and they actually put some malicious software, and people, organizations who thought it was legitimate software launched it, and they were immediately there were immediately backdoors which were installed in all those organizations which had installed this particular software from SolarWinds. Very similar, right? Very threatening. We still don't know what is the effect of damage which this is happening, which has happened. It is just in the very initial stage. The cyber forensic investigation by each of these 16,000 installations is going to take time. It's not something which will happen overnight. We will need to keep ourselves glued to the news to find out what really is happening, right? So this is just another. So how do you detect such kind of installations, right? So here is a small tip. In terms of network devices, I'm sorry, this particular software, the Secure Boot software, is something which actually was generated by, is something which has actually been developed by Cisco. Cisco is one of the leading network and security software providers in the world. So they actually launched this product called Secure Boot software. What it does is, whenever they release a next version firmware, it will have a hash, and once the machine it is actually installed on a router or a switch or anything of that sort, it has a separate chip, and it will say the first time the code is executed, it will give a hash value, and every time the device actually boots, it will compare the hash value. And if you are familiar with the concept of hashing, if the hash values are the same, then it means that the image, the operating system of that particular device is intact. There is no way that that there is any other malicious infections has happened. If the hash value is any different, then it means that I may be compromised. Then there is some kind of a backdoor which has installed. Why am I talking about network devices here? Because network devices are the best places where one can have a backdoor installed, right? So this is a small dashboard of the Cisco Safe Boot. I'm not too sure if you are able to look at this image, but I have given a detailed, I have given the link from where I have taken this image as the footnote. You will be able to find out that across on the left hand side, if you see, there are all these network devices written by network, and how many of these the base image complies to the basic hash value which was installed is all shown, and anything which has got a difference is also shown by all those markers there. So those are the areas which I, as a security professional, will need to investigate in order to detect such kind of installations, right? So we are moving into the last two sets. Now we are going to the most important phase, which is called the command and control. Command and control, the classic case is the ransomware attacks which have been happening. We have seen that this particular the WannaCry ransomware which happened, this was the particular screen which happened, right? So what really happened after all the other phases of kill chain has processed through, it actually comes to the command and control. So what here, if you look at it, this particular screen is from WannaCry. It actually goes ahead and encrypts the entire system, and then this computer talks to this particular command and control center. So if you look at it, all these IP addresses which are mentioned on the right side, 188.166.23.127 over port 443. 443 is the most secure port. Is where this particular machines have started to talk to this particular command and control center. So the communication has been happening all along to all these IP addresses, but only sudden out of one all of a sudden one day this command and control center gave the message to this, but all these nodes which are connected to itself to go ahead and encrypt themselves, and they encrypted themselves and they showed these screens. So you had to pay up. Only if you paid up, they actually gave you the decryption keys for you to go ahead and decrypt. Whether they actually did give the encryption keys, we don't know. So this we as a how do you detect such kind of command and control centers? By using a SIM tool, by using network monitoring tools, right? So this is how you find out that there are traffic which is going to such kind of suspicious IP addresses, which will need to be further looked into. So there are IP address databases available over the internet which we can go ahead and subscribe to, where we will be able to find out what are these different places where suspicious IP addresses are there. And if you integrate it from if you integrate these IP databases to a SIM tool, whenever there is traffic to any such kind of suspicious IPs, it automatically will flag an alert, and we as security administrators can go ahead and shun that particular IP address from our firewall or all our edge devices to ensure that no such further communication happens. So when such kind of this thing happens, it means that the attacker has proliferated over the last 5 phases and right now is in the command and control phase. So then you will need to start working backwards to go back from command and from command and control. You will need to go to installation, from installation to exploitation, from there to delivery, from there to weaponization, and from there to ransom. Reconnaissance, right? So you will need to work backwards to find out, to fortify yourselves in all the stages. So which brings us to the last phase, which is action. Action, as the word denotes, is the objective of the entire mission. I, as an attacker, I want to attack a particular bank to actually maliciously transfer money out of few accounts to my personal accounts. That could be my objective. Or I want to attack an organization. I want to attack a pharmaceutical organization because they are making cutting edge research in order to develop the new coronavirus vaccine. That could be the objective, right? So the action, as the word mentioned, is the actual objective as to why an attacker does the entire activity. So far was all technical. This is the only place where it becomes very logical, right? So so the objectives can be either data exfiltration or data destruction or encryption for a ransom. It could be anything. It could be any of these different motives why an attacker is doing something like this. So here is a small Python script which is actually running on a Linux machine, which actually shows what is the action. So how do you actually find out such kind of activities? Again, by constantly monitoring the network. There's no silver bullet in most cases, as what I did mention. So here is a small Python script which actually constantly keeps scanning the network for any type of ICMP traffic or ping traffic which is happening within from my machine to the others. So these are just ways on how you will be able to detect action. NetFlow is a command, is a protocol which was actually developed by Cisco, this particular protocol actually takes most critical information from whatever is happening. It can be integrated on switches or routers or firewalls, and from there you will be able to see the flow of traffic from one node to the other and all that. So here is an example of how using a NetFlow collector and you connect it to a management console, you will be able to detect such action. So you will be able to find, you by using such kind of NetFlow with a management console, you will be able to find out where, when, who, what, all these kind of information. So I've taken a small snapshot of the NetFlow monitor here. So it tells you where, it tells you when, it gives you the time, it tells you what is the particular application, what is the packet, what is the port number, and who is the source address, and who is the destination address, and things like that. So this is something which you will be able to find out. So that brings us to almost the end of our almost to the end of our slide. Unfortunately, I think the last poll has not been configured here. So I don't think we'll be able to run this poll in this presentation here today. So we will need to skip it. And hence we'll move over to the last slide, which is the thank you slide. So thank you very much to all of you for being patient and hearing out to whatever I have been talking about the cyber kill chain. I hope it does really add value to whatever you already know, and you understand the importance of the cyber kill chain over anything else. So, and I really hope that all of you turn up to be cybersecurity professionals, and I'm sure you all will be embarking on a professional journey very soon, and you will start giving job interviews. So cybersecurity starts with you, and that's something which you would need to do. So you will need to understand what exactly is happening with your data. That's the first point. So I just thought I'd leave it at that with a small cartoon here. So I think we have still about 15 minutes, and I'm completely available for questions. So please go ahead.
Questions from the participants, please. Any questions from the participants? You can even type in the chat box. Sir, I think they are very clear with your talk today. It was really a great session. Like you have started with the basics and step by step, all the steps in cyber kill chain. You made it as a very interactive. That is interactive in the sense very interesting session. That's what I can say. It was really an interesting session with all examples which we can easily understand. If I want to teach something in some portion, I think I even will take your examples. Like
we keep losing you every now and then. I'm not too sure why, but we've lost you on your audio.
My audio, okay. Sir,
okay, now we can hear you. Okay, not a problem. I got what you said, ma'am. Okay. So I will share this presentation with all of you. I'll make a PDF and I will share it with all of you. It has my coordinates in case you do want to get in touch with me for anything related to this subject or today's presentation. Then feel free to reach out to me. I'll be more than obliged to answer you all. So once again, I take this wonderful opportunity to thank Revati ma'am, to thank Subhashini ma'am, from the entire VIT staff here today. for taking the time to have me here today, to have this wonderful opportunity to interact with the students of VIT. Thank you all, and wish you all the very best for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I lost my network in between, so I could join only now. It was a wonderful session, and you had spoken very clearly about the controls and all the different steps in cyber kill chain. It was very interesting. I hope the participants would have definitely benefited. Thanks a lot for accepting our invitation and for being here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.